Good morning, you guys, or good afternoon. I forgot. We're doing a special edition. See, it's 4:30, and you know, the day has started. I hope everybody is having a wonderful day. We are here for a special edition of Get It, Got It Good. I am your host, Naja Wilhite, and today we have some special guests in the building I'm very excited about. We also have two guests joining us via telephone, so we'll be sure to join them in as well. But before we get started, there's a brief commercial break, and then I will be right back to introduce you to our guests. So, welcome back. So today, if you guys have been following us on social media, you will see that we have some very distinguished leadership in the house from Howard County, Maryland today. I'm going to introduce the two on the phone first so I don't forget them. Pretend they're here. We have County Executive Calvin Ball on the phone. You want to say hi?
Good afternoon.
And then we also have Councilman of District 2 for Howard County, Opel Jones.
Hello, great to be there.
Via voice wave, right? And then I'm going to go left to right, or right to left, depending on your perception, right? We have next to me, Chair of Howard County Board of Ed, Mavis Ellis.
Good evening, everyone.
And wait, really quick. She's a history maker, you guys. You are the first African-American chair?
African-American female, yes I am.
Oh, so there you go. You checked two boxes. That's awesome. I want to get more into that in a second. Sure. And then next to us, we have the first African-American state's attorney, Richard Gibson.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And then we have Howard County board member, Sabina.
Nice to be here.
So you guys, I wanted to bring them all on a show together, number one, because I like to represent different people from different areas, and of course we're all about getting people the information. Are we live? I don't know if she can hear me. Getting people information, making sure that it is all, that you know where to go to get more, and then it's all good, okay? So with that being said, let's get started. So first and foremost, you guys, are you all from Maryland?
I am not.
I am not.
I am not.
Oh my goodness, what about you? The three in-house are not from Maryland. What about you two, gentlemen?
Yes, I'm from Maryland.
And that
So
was...
I am originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I moved to Maryland when I was 13. I went to high school in Prince George's County. So I've been in the Maryland area since as a teenager.
And I'll have to get you guys' voices separated in my head, but I was about to assume that was Councilman Opel. Mm-hmm. So, and then County Executive Ball, you're from Baltimore, correct?
Yep, sure am.
So and then you guys are from, since you're not from Maryland, where are you from?
So I am from Maryland.
Okay.
I came here in 2003 to Maryland. But before that, I grew up all over the world. My father was in an industry where we traveled every couple of years, so I've lived in many parts of the world.
Kind of like a military kid.
Yeah, very much like a military kid, yes. And by the way, County Executive Ball is the first African-American county executive, so he is also a history maker.
Indeed, and thank you for adding that, because definitely, how does that feel? History makers. And as you guys know, we also had the first African-American elect Sheriff Marcus Harris here a little while ago. I don't even know when now, but a little while ago. So if you guys missed that, check back with the shows. And State's Attorney, do people actually say State's Attorney Gibson?
People who know me say Rich.
Yes, I
know. People who don't know me, the Honorable State's Attorney Rich Gibson or Rich Gibson. I'm not a very formal person, but State's Attorney is the title.
Okay. So, where are you from?
I'm originally from the Bronx, New York.
Bronx.
And I moved from there to New Jersey when I was in high school, and then went to undergrad in New Jersey, and then went to Howard in D.C. When I went to Howard in D.C., I moved to Maryland.
HU, DMV. Well, what about you?
Well, I am a Midwesterner. I grew up outside of Chicago, but came here after graduate school in '76. So I've been here a long time. So now I might consider that I'm a Marylander.
Yes. We're gonna induct you into Maryland.
We're going to redefine Maryland.
Yes, redefine Maryland. As you guys know, I'm from HoCo. I'm a Columbia girl. I grew up in Columbia since the age of 8. I'm originally from Baltimore as well. So, my family's from Baltimore, and then we moved to Columbia 8. So I'm very familiar with Howard County. Hence the reason, you guys, I had to represent for this. So being a politician, a lot of people either love it or hate it, right? So how did you guys get on the path? And we'll just go down the line from the left to the right, you guys on the phone. So we're going to start with board member Taj, okay? So how did you go and decide, okay, I'm doing this, but now I want to go and run for office?
So I didn't. I've been in education pretty much most of my career, and before that I did child hunger and nutrition and poverty programs. And I've been in education since, 13 years, looking at programs across the country and just about everything related to education, school reform, professional development, curriculum reform, equity, keeping diverse teachers in the classroom, and recruiting diverse teachers into the classroom. And I just had a group of people who asked me if I would do this because I was in education, and would I represent their voice in equity, particularly. And I said no. But then, I started to see the opportunity for it change, and opportunity for having greater representation. And Mavis will talk a little bit about that as well. But just having, changing our world. We see a world in which 74% of our teachers are white, and the student body in our Howard County is 64% students of color. So we see this disparity represented in the leadership, in the teaching force, certainly, and also within decision-making bodies of the school system. We see curriculum not being reflective. We certainly could add more to that. And just racial disparity in discipline. And there's so many other things that we can work on that I really wanted to be a part of that. And that's how I decided to run.
What about the man versus female teacher ratio? Is there more female teachers as well? Yeah. Definitely, right?
Of every, yes, absolutely. There are very few male teachers.
Okay.
And, so it used to be a male-dominated profession, and then the men went to, and women weren't allowed, and then men went to war. And also they would work for nothing, women would. So then it became a female-dominated profession that was paid very poorly and has continued
to be paid very poorly.
Right. And the way, and there's no other male-dominated profession that's paid as poorly with the amount of education and experience that you need to be a teacher.
Wow. So. Wow. I always say, I'm a teacher as well. I started teaching at 16, and I teach dance, and then it transferred into other things later in life. But I always say, teachers affect the next generation.
Yes.
So they definitely need to be compensated for that. And you only get paid for that time you're at the school. But we know it takes so much more time. You come out your pockets for extra materials. You bring food to class. I know a teacher who actually brings enough food every day to feed 200 kids because they need snacks at Patuxent. And then you guys have to grade papers, and it's just a lot. And that you're not compensated.
Statistic is like 90-something% of teachers put money from their own pocket.
Yes, and to decorate your own rooms too. You know it has to be colorful and inviting.
That's true. That's true.
Right? Okay, so State's Attorney Gibson, what about you?
So I started off clerking for a judge in Prince George's County, Judge Herman C. Dawson, and I saw both criminal and civil and realized that criminal appealed to me. So I began prosecuting under Glenn Ivey in 03, 04, and I just saw the opportunity to affect a space where there aren't many of us. There aren't many minorities. There aren't many African Americans that are prosecutors. There aren't many African American attorneys in terms of the total number of attorneys.
Period, yes.
Right? But in terms of prosecutors, most prosecutors are white in this country. but the communities they impact the most happen to be minority communities, black and brown people. And I just looked at it as an opportunity to represent victims of all races, speak on their behalf, and to do my part to make the system a little more fair, a little more open-minded, to address implicit bias through my own experiences, and to learn how to be a good prosecutor first. And I did that for 15 years in both Prince George's County and Baltimore City. And then I decided in 2014 that I had the requisite skills to be a prosecutor, and I had not mastered the wrong word, I was extremely proficient at trying cases, but I wanted to play a role in setting policy, because that's when you can really affect change, at the policy level. And so in order to set policy, you have to be the state's attorney. And so I knew I wanted to run. I thought that the way the state's attorney's office in Howard County was run, I lived in Howard County, and what I saw was an office that was very reactive. Historically speaking, prosecutors' offices are very reactive, meaning crime happens, it's reported to police respond, we begin to get involved, we investigate with the police, coordinate with them, and then we prosecute the case. So it's crime, it's action, response. Action, response. But if you're proactive, if you actually try to get involved before the crime happens, right, you can actually drive down the amount of crime that's occurring. And if you get involved in the back end related to people that are coming out of incarcerated periods of time to society, and you try to encourage them to, look, we actually care about your outcome. I will prosecute you vigorously if I have to, but I don't want to have to do that. I prefer if you just were a law-abiding citizen, contributed to society, paid your taxes, and, lived a good life. That would be my preference. And encouraging them on that path, letting them know that, look, you've made a decision, it had a criminal consequence, that consequence is going to impact you. Your life's not going to be easier for that, but it doesn't define you. You are more than your worst choice, right? And so you can then, rehabilitate yourself and move past this to a certain extent, and encourage them in that. You can kind of drive down the actual amount of crime that we have to deal with in the first place. Howard County has a community that is involved and is invested and can be partnered with to address those needs. And some of the systemic issues that exist in other communities nearby, we don't have some of those problems, and so we're actually we're fertile ground for actually affecting change. And so that's what I'm about.
Howard County has been listed as one of the best places in the country to live, and our crime rate is relatively low compared to other places.
Yes.
So are you going to be implemental in starting programs or helping on both ends as well? Yep.
So I'm currently meeting with the school system to start a program that we hope to have. I don't want something that just a lift for me. I want something that's going to be a continuing program, something that I can help start, but it's going to have its own legs, right? And that will be geared around educating. Hopefully, we're targeting middle schoolers about smart choices related to social media, related to drug use. For me, a big issue is the opioid epidemic, and the choices that kids make. Kids are children, and they're going to make childlike decisions. The problem is some childlike decisions have adult-like consequences.
Yes, indeed.
And so, while I would never encourage anyone to drink underage, or I'd never encourage anyone to smoke marijuana, the consequences of that are very different from if you use synthetic opioids. So if someone were to use fentanyl or carfentanil, it is immediately addicting and can be immediately fatal. And so a childlike approach to a problem can lead to an adult consequence, death, right? If you post something on social media, it might impact your ability to get into school, might impact your ability to get caught. And when I was a kid growing up, there was no social media.
Thank goodness, right?
So we weren't faced with the same adult-like consequences for our childlike behaviors. And so educating kids about those things will hopefully drive down some of the issues that we're seeing and that we're dealing with. And then, again, on the back end, related to reentry, we're trying to work with a population to come up with a program that's already in existence that trains recently released individuals in mechanics. So people donate cars, but the car needs to be repaired. The program will pay for that person to learn how to repair the vehicle. Right? That vehicle is then provided to an individual who needs a car who's recently been released, who doesn't have Howard County is a community
where you need to drive.
You need to be able to drive to work. So,
Yeah.
so you're solving two birds. You're taking someone who needs training, giving them the training so they can have a job that's law-abiding and provide for themselves, and you're assisting a person who needs a car, who's recently released from prison and getting a vehicle so they can actually get to work. And so we're working with them to work with them on expungement issues and to help promote the program so that we can kind of address it on that end.
I know someone who's benefited from learning the mechanics while he was incarcerated, and now he has a very, productive job and lifestyle, and so that's great. And middle school is also the best age, I think, where kids start to detour and go different directions. So, Chair Ellis.
Okay, so I've been in education over 50 years, from Head Start through college, and presently I'm still working in Montgomery County Public Schools as a pupil personnel worker.
PPW,
which is
I love my PPW.
which is an advocate for students and their families and a resource to the school staff. But in terms of education, I've taught in the inner city schools. In Chicago, I've taught in very diverse schools in Montgomery County. It was interesting when I started teaching in Montgomery County. With the degree in psychology, I wound up teaching government because the first time I had kids take the citizenship test, I had a 100% pass rate. So they said, oh, you'll teach government. Okay, but as I taught government, one of the things that I learned was that education policy is public policy. And so one of the first steps I took to get elected to anything was to the union, to the local union, MCEA. I was elected to their board of directors to help make policy decisions that impacted teachers and kids in Montgomery County. After one term on that board, I ran for the NEA, National Education Association's board of directors, and was elected to represent the 74,000 educators in the state of Maryland on a national level. I served 2 terms there. I had to get elected all across the state, had to run, give speeches, and that's where I really learned how to campaign.
That's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of volunteer hours because you don't get paid for doing that, and you find out what the concerns are of educators and families, and when you go to their conferences, they have 10,000 people who meet and make decisions about what will happen for the 3 million educators across the country. And I was able to push through various kinds of legislation dealing with like restorative justice before anybody really got involved with restorative justice.
Can you explain that really quick for them?
Restorative justice is a way to look at discipline and when somebody commits some kind of act against the school system, against the school building, they come back and learn how they have to restore the relationships with the people that might have been offended. And as a pupil personnel worker who deals with discipline, kids getting suspended, recommended for expulsion, I know how important it is to have a positive kind of discipline for all of our kids. So when I talk about discipline, I was also the president of the International Association for Truancy and Dropout Prevention, where you learn that one suspension can make a student more likely to drop out of school.
Really?
Yeah.
One suspension.
Just one.
Doesn't matter what age?
Doesn't matter what age. It
Wow.
can happen. So the whole school to prison pipeline, that is something that I've been working with for years so that that doesn't happen to our children. Okay, so then a few years ago we learned that over 50% of the kids in America's schools get free or reduced lunch. That's an indicator of poverty.
Yes, it is.
And so if you have over 50% of the kids in America's schools getting free or reduced lunch, living in poverty, and there are ways to work with those kids in schools to make them successful, I asked NEA, what are you doing? And they said, oh, we're not doing anything. Nobody's asked about it. So they committed to creating brochures, recommendations, best practices for their 3 million members on how to work with kids living with trauma on a regular basis. And we know not only is it poverty, but we have kids dealing with questions of immigration, violence at home, ACEs, what's acute childhood experiences, stressed out parents. All of those things impact our kids. Hunger. What they call it, food insufficiency. You know, if you don't have enough to feed your kids over the weekend, they may get food during the week, but those get to be issues. So I was on the NEA Board of Directors for 6 years, served as the NEA Board, chair of the NEA Board Black Caucus for the black educators around the country. And when those 2 terms were about to be over is when I ran for the school board in Howard County, so that I could bring the expertise with working with educators all across the country, bring my experiences from working in schools, both elementary and secondary schools in Montgomery County, where we look at students who are drug involved in middle school, where we deal with mental health issues not only in high school. And let me just say this, because so many times we look at what happens with our high school students when they're stressed, depressed, and have all kinds of issues. We have kindergartners, first graders, third graders who are stressed, being placed in hospitals for resources. We look at our middle schoolers who start experimenting with the drugs, who are dealing with social media things, doing things they shouldn't be doing on social media.
Yes.
And they need direction. They're just kids, you know. So on my board, I'm the only educator working in a public school system, and I bring that information to the board every meeting.
So you have that direct contact, because a lot of times the complaint is that the policymakers are out of touch with reality. They don't know what's really going on the front lines, and then whatever policies are not really suitable in practical situations.
Right, absolutely.
So that's awesome.
So I must admit, I was at the march in Annapolis on Monday with my 8,500 good friends to march for full funding of the legislation that's coming forward. So yes, I'm
awesome. See, a wealth of information and experiences, right? Okay, so Councilman, you ready?
Oh yeah, we're ready.
Okay, so Councilman Jones, how did you get into politics?
Well, how I got into politics, ironically, I have to give thanks to the other gentleman on the phone, County Executive Calvin Ball. So he was the councilman in this district. So he was my councilman for as long as I lived here. I moved in Howard County. I moved to District 2 in 2011, and he's been the councilman since 2006. As soon as I moved here, I had no idea about council. I didn't know what. I just knew about the governor and Elijah Cummings. That's all I knew in Maryland, right? And so I'm getting active in the local chapter of my fraternity, the NAACP. I'm helping out with the schools. I'm helping out my oldest at the time he was like 7, 8. So I'm helping him out with his schooling and different things, and just getting involved in the PTAs. And I just started noticing that there was a need for people to step up. The community here in Howard County is really, really involved, but they needed more. And when it came time for this position, for someone to run for the position, Calvin Ball was term limited, and he was running for county executive. So I started putting feelers out there like, oh, okay, well, who's going to be next? Who's going to take over the mantle of all the wonderful things Calvin Ball has done in the district? And no one was really talking about nothing. I mean, I heard a name here or there, but I wasn't all that impressed. So given all that I was involved in, I was like, well, you know, I'm sure there'd be a crowded field, but I'm going to give it a shot. And here I am.
Awesome. So you never considered politics before? You never had the experience? You only knew like 2 people?
Never in my life. Never in my life did I ever think. I mean, this is 2019. I'll go back as far as 2014, 2015. I would have never imagined being into politics or running for office for anything.
So that's a huge lifestyle change, though, right?
My background is education. I'm a teacher. You know, I love the kids. I love teaching, and just everything that was going on in my life. I figured that I would just be supporting whoever was in office. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I think it's not a coincidence that so many leaders come from the teaching profession, you guys. And I think that's because we see a need, and then we are directly on the front lines with what's happening, what's next. And so it just kind of naturally leads to a life of its own. Whether it's through running for office, whether it's through starting businesses, programs, whatever the case may be. Okay.
Right.
Last but not least, County Executive Calvin Ball. What about you?
Well, I grew up, as we indicated, in Maryland, and the whole time I was growing up in Catonsville, we talked about Howard County, where there was Columbia, where there was opportunity, where it wasn't just diverse, but it was inclusive, and it was a place where people were really open-minded. And so after I got married, I talked to my wife about moving there and raising our family there. And so when I came here, I recognized that I wanted to be involved with an impact, and I wanted to make our community better for our family. So I got involved. I did a lot of volunteer work. I was on the village board. I rose to be head of our Young Democrats chapter. And then just doing all of these things, I started interacting with elected officials and seeing what were the issues, how they could, do things that would help our community. And then one day, at a volunteer event, someone came to me and said, "Hey, where do you live?" And I told them, which I thought was an odd question, but I answered it. And they said, "Well, the council member from that district is term limited and has to retire, and you should consider running for county council." And then as a county council member, I recognized how important it was to have these collaborative relationships with the county executive, with the Board of Ed, with our state and federal delegation. And once I saw an opportunity to expand my service, to expand my impact into future generations, I ran for county executive, and have been blessed to not only win, but to win during a year where I'm honored to serve with such incredible public servants, where we can again collaborate to make a difference one life at a time.
Wow. So what I'm hearing as a theme is that you guys weren't planning on running for the most part. You saw a need, you decided to run. I wonder, is that the general consensus for most politicians? Do most people, born and want to be a politician, or do they just kind of fall into it just by, steps leading up to that?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I mean, some people, they're political families.
Yeah. I'm an educator and a mediator by training. So my doctorate's in education. I'm a certified mediator. So I work for the Office of the Attorney General. I've done a lot of teaching. And so I see being elected as public service. And when we take our experiences and our strengths and we add those to those of others, we're able to be much greater than the sum of our parts. And so I think it's less impactful, less helpful if we have people who have just gone into it to be a politician or be elected, and more if we have educators, engineers, doctors, lawyers, public safety first responders who come together in the pursuit of public service, and then we all add our voices to that chorus of public service.
Right.
And I'll just add to that. I think for many of us, we were activists before, and saw that the tables of decision making and budget making, policy making, had a homogenous group. And I think that if you've heard Chimamanda Adichie, is the danger of a single story. When you write policy, it has to be informed by the life experiences of all
the collective.
Yes. And if only one group is represented, then you have the danger of a single story. And so I think we need the multiple stories. And I think Councilman Ball, or County Executive Ball, has been remarkable in just the leadership team and how he has led. And the decision-making bodies that he's created also do truly reflect all of us in Howard County.
Yes.
I totally agree with that, because when you're in a classroom and you look at the people who are making the decisions, you say, are they speaking for me, or are they just putting forward their own agenda.
Based on the budget and
based
whatever.
on whatever. And many times as a classroom teacher, you might look at the people on the school board or the superintendent and say, they don't know what we have to deal with. That new program that they're putting forward, we don't have time to do it. And so it really does take a different perspective, and the issue of service that both Sabina and County Executive Baltz mentioned, service is so important because for school board members, we give a lot of time, a lot of time, more than the public would ever know, and the compensation is very low, and you have to be dedicated to give that much time. And for many, they can't hang. They have to, you know. They
It is. It's difficult. I mean, really, when you consider an average senator is worth $3.2 million, and you consider that our governing bodies and representative bodies have this much wealth, and then even for a school board member, I am a single working mom, and Mavis is a full-time working pupil personnel.
PPW.
PPW.
Personnel worker. I know that's a mouthful. I just say PPW.
It is really hard to balance those, and to not have compensation for that is a difficult thing. And we do then select either a stay-at-home parent, often a white stay-at-home mom, or a retired individual who would then. So we kind of select for that, right? If there's that much work and you can't work, and that I want to just give props to Chair Ellis that she has really, because of her own voice and her life experience, that she has made it a manageable role. It's still unmanageable, but and I don't know how she does it, but her voice of being a pupil personnel worker and having the national perspective and state perspective and local board perspective, I mean, I don't know that we could get anything more amazing than she is. Yeah.
So, you guys, when we come back from this brief break, I want to talk about, the collaborations between the different offices and how that works. Okay? Yeah. So, we'll be right back.
Can I?
Wait 1 second. So, welcome back. I told you a brief break. Give me 1 second. So, the collaborations between the offices, a lot of times there's a lot of, and we see it in D.C. all of the time, I'll be nice, but the inability to work well with one another, right? And so I noticed in Howard County that you guys seem to always be talking or communicating or partnering or whatever the case may be for the best interests of the county. Yep. So how does that work, and how did you guys become such great communicators amongst each other?
So I'll start on this one. So part of it was we all ran together or at a similar time in 2018. And running for office is not for the faint of heart, right? And so, there are times where, Calvin was someone who I leaned on and gave me guidance and support. There were times where Opel, everyone in this room, right, was someone who I spoke with or knocked doors with or, leaned on, and they leaned on me. And it was a very collaborative process to get here, all right? I think it was genuine. It wasn't artificial, the bonds that were formed when you're in that space. And that the collaborative nature of how we got here does lend itself to a more collaborative governance, right? The fact that I can call Calvin and run a question by him, or he has a question, he can reach out to me, and there's not like any 3 lines of disconnect. He can get me immediately, and I can get him immediately. If Opel has a question, it's not for him to send me a text, right? We talk all the time, and so because we have real, genuine relationships and friendships that support our ultimate goal of being in office, there's a benefit to the community that's relayed from that. Now, we're all professionals, and if things turn out differently, we would all still try to excel in our spaces, even if we weren't as friendly with each other. But the fact that we are friendly with each other does make getting the individual missions accomplished much more manageable and efficient.
I've noticed, and I think the community has noticed on a whole, the collaboration or the friendship, the synergy that you guys all bring to office and working together. And you see that you're out together all of the time and you're always tagging each other and everything else. So it's very evident to us that, okay, we have this issue. If we go to this one, that they'll work as a team. You guys, I always talk about on this show about teamwork and networking, and in anything, entrepreneurship or anything, you have to build that strong network and that strong team, that so you can pull from the different resources and create the different programs that'll be beneficial and cross the lines. So who else wants to contribute to that, since you started first? Anybody
I'll
else?
say ditto.
This is Calvin. You know, I think at the end of the day, our goal is to help make people's lives better. And the average person doesn't know, oh, that's the state's attorney's role, or that's the board of ed's role, or that's the council, the county executive. They just know most times they need help, and they need somebody who cares about them and their families. And so the more that we can work together and be reasonable and collaborate, the better we can do our job, which are at the end of the day, not executive, not legislative, not criminal education. That's the pathway to do our jobs. Our jobs at the end of the day are helping people.
All right.
Awesome.
I totally agree with that, and I must admit, I did not run this past year, so I'm the only one here who didn't.
Who's relaxed them?
When you were on the phone a lot.
I was on the phone a lot. But before that, I had met everybody who is on here now during the time that I was running in 2016. So there were that networking had already started, and now that we have, our board has 4 new board members out of the 7, and we are all working together so that we can collaborate even more. The county council has 5 new council members. We're working with them so everybody knows what our expectations are as a school board, working with the county council as we try to move a budget in the next couple of months, because that's very important. We have to talk. We have to work together so that we can get what's best for the children and families of our community.
Okay. So, you guys, as we are running out of time, I want to really quickly address the fact that we're all minorities, right? And Howard County is a melting pot. It was built to be a melting pot, and different races can come together. So now that the leadership represents that dynamic, what do you think are the benefits or the things that will change within the county?
Calvin?
Well, I'll jump in here. This is Opel Jones. I'll jump in. I mean, you could just look to see who are the leaders, who's elected, the staff that we're hiring, the people of positions that our county executive who he's appointing. I'm not saying nothing about no one else, but I can guarantee that some of the people he's putting in place would have never happened in a previous administration or 2 or 3. It just wouldn't have happened, and it wouldn't have even, it's fun to talk about, and it's cool to say, oh wow, I wonder if this could happen one day. But when we have diversity at the table, when we have representation, we can pass it on in terms of hiring and appointing people who look like all of us. And I think that's really, really important. I think it's going to benefit anyone that's viewing from the outside, as well as being at the table to be able to make decisions and complain about things and raise certain issues that a majority, if not 100% white body wouldn't be able to think about or say, just because of experience. Not necessarily because they're racist, but just because, if you're black, you have black experiences. If you're, Asian or Latino or Indian, you just have those experiences. If everyone at the table is not a person of color, you may miss that. And I think that we can bring that to the table.
I want to add one thing. I'm sorry, Mavis. Did you want to? Ladies first.
Now, I was going to say, when I came on the board, I can remember having staff come before the board for budget discussions. The staff who came before the board, I flipped after the end of the meeting because there was no one who presented who looked like me. I said, I can't be on this board and not see diversity in the staff. And there has been change. There has been not only males, but females. We've gotten significant number of African American females in leadership positions in the school system since I've been on the board, because I will ask, where is the representation?
I just want to add that not in terms of the county, the impact. If you never see yourself reflected in positions, your mind will shut down that option. You just will assume that it's just not for you and it's not available to you, and your mind will chart alternate paths. Society will miss out on that next great engineer because instead of thinking that I can be an engineer too, I've got to go sweep the floor, right? And so when we show our community that everyone, regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, whatever it is that's different about you, that's not a bad thing, and you can do these esteemed high-level things, that opens our youth's minds.
Yes.
And that opens our adults' minds. People have a chance to see, oh, wait, I'm reflected in this space. Maybe I can do this. And that is the real promise. That's the real promise for tomorrow.
I'll just add one.
Sure.
I was going to say the exact same thing as everybody, but particularly this is the children. There was a kindergarten class I was asked, what does a president look like? And they drew a black man. And that is the power of a vision, like a visual image, right? Is to be able to see, that's what they saw, so that's the president to them.
Awesome.
And to be able to see yourself there.
So you guys, this is why I do the show. I like bringing on different examples. Every week we're talking about different examples and how you could go from who you think you are, nobody's a nobody, but let's just say, for example, from this nobody nowhere status to whatever you want to be. It's all possible. But this is only the beginning and the introduction. I would like to thank all of my guests, including the two on the telephone, for coming out and doing this interview as a group and sharing your experiences and how it's possible and being that example for us all. And you guys, join us next week at our normal time, which is 11:30 on WBGR Health and Wellness Channel. And as always, be an original, because an original is always worth more than a copy. Have a great day, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.